Now, the Russian assault on Ukraine began in the wee hours of the dawn with a series of missile strikes that were carried out across several cities in Ukraine simultaneously. Now, the cities that in fact came under the Russian attack in the very first few minutes since the assault began are there on your screen. This, of course, is the map of Ukraine, and it shows the cities that have in fact been targeted by the Russian forces. Now, the Russian forces yesterday took over Luhansk and Donetsk, the regions highlighted in orange on the eastern part of Ukraine. The Russian troops then managed to enter into other major Ukrainian cities such as Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Kyiv and Kherson. Now, Ukraine was attacked from three sides, from land and air and sea. The red dots on the map signify the cities where the explosions and missile strikes have taken place. The cities such as Kyiv, Odessa, Mariupol, Kharkiv and other regions in center and western Ukraine came under the assault by the Russians. Crimea, remember, was annexed by the Russians back in 2014 and remains under Russian control, along with two separatist states of Donetsk and Luhansk. All right, now to give us more perspective, we are joined by Mr. Jason Beardsley, the National Executive Director from the Association of the U.S. Navy. Now, Mr. Beardsley, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on WION. We've been looking with what is happening with Ukraine after Russia launched an attack on the country yesterday morning. So far, according to the reports that have come in, at least about 137 people have lost their lives. And according to fresh reports, there are more reports of missile strikes that are taking place even as we speak. How do you see this conflict progressing from here?
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. And you did a great job on the report leading into this to talk about the big situation, which is the Russian attack looks like it's decapitating, the political structure, the military structure. And of course, I think Putin has tilted his hand and said he's looking to take control of logistics routes, transportation hubs, airfields, in order for them, the Russian military, to really survive in the next days, weeks, months to come. They're going to need to move a lot of material, people, blood supplies, food into the entire area. So that's why what you're seeing is the targeted strikes against hard facilities, military facilities, and again, political, because it looks like what Vladimir Putin is saying is he wants to establish a pro-Putin government in Ukraine, and he's willing to put all risks on the table to get to that.
And also, if you look at the manner in which Russia has gone about its operations, it has systematically, through its missile strikes, gone about dismantling Ukraine's ability to defend itself. According to reports that have come in, it is many of these air bases, many of these air defense systems that Ukraine had in its possessions that have been targeted through these missile strikes. Are we now looking at a situation where it's almost going to be impossible for Ukraine to defend itself in the face of this Russian onslaught?
Well, in the big picture, yes, and that's in the big frame of things. Russia will take nominal control with conventional forces of the ground. But here's where it gets problematic. The longer their forces are there, extended lines of communication and support allow for insurgents, guerrilla warfare, irregular warfare to continually harass and interdict the Russians who are exposed throughout the Ukrainian territory. It's one of the reasons you're seeing a limit to the loss of lives. You mentioned about 130, 140 or so. We would be in the thousands if this was a full-scale bloody invasion. What I think Vladimir Putin is saying or suggesting with his tactics is that he intends to control the country, and he is not looking for a long, irregular warfare fight with the locals.
Now, at this point of time, looking at things as to how they have progressed, do you think Russia is interested in bringing about a regime change? Is that what Russia is looking at? Or is Russia looking to annex more territory from Ukraine?
Yeah, I believe they're, number one, certainly politically looking for a regime change. I think that's fairly clear now. And as far as territory, if not direct control, which I think he'll establish in the eastern province, Luhansk and Donetsk, he'll be looking for nominal control in the western province. What that means is a pro-Putin friendly president, so Zelensky out and a pro-Putin puppet in the government. That's what he's done in Crimea. It's what he did in Belarus. This is what he's done in Kazakhstan recently, and then in Georgia back in 2008, 2009. So this is a pretty standard fair play, apart from the fact that this is one of the larger scale invasions we've seen from Putin. It suggests that he's willing to go all the way.
Absolutely indeed, and many have in fact described it as an attempt to rewrite the world order as it emerged after the Second World War. Many have also described it as the worst crisis in Europe since the end of the Second World War. The question that I want to ask you is, in the weeks leading up to Russia's military action in Ukraine, it's not as if the world was caught off guard. We all knew what was happening. We saw the mobilization by the Russians. There was a lot of hectic diplomatic activity that was also conducted. But has the West fallen short in creating a deterrence again for Russia to have invaded into Ukraine?
Yeah, 100%. I'm sorry to say, but one of the things the military and the Defense Department looked at doing and has never done, that's political leadership, is put enough armament on the ground for the Ukrainians to be able to establish a defense. That's shoulder fire missiles, Stingers, Javelins. It's anti-tank missiles, the TOWs. Those can be carried by individual men, so they can be brought to the front lines. They can be secreted throughout the country, and that would have disrupted the air superiority that Russia has, and it would have caused problems for their armor. That single-handedly would have helped cripple this invasion. We did not do it. You'll remember back in 2014, the U.S. Senate got together and passed some support that ended up being food and blankets. The United States has been relatively weak or anemic in supporting their military, and at the risk of offense, we probably had the best time to interdict this in the last several months and missed that target. Now our leverage is almost gone.
And also I want you to weigh in terms of NATO's membership. The fact of the matter is Ukraine is not a member nation of the NATO military alliance, and therefore NATO is not duty-bound to protect in case it comes under attack. But the fact is this entire crisis has been precipitated because the leadership, the political leadership in Ukraine was intent on becoming a part of the NATO military alliance. And that is the reason why we are in this situation where the Russian troops have now moved into Ukraine. Looking from the long-term perspective, is there a problem in terms of how NATO goes about inducting any of these new nations that are possibly in the neighborhood of Russia, inducting them into the NATO military lines, and also in the interim period when NATO is considering their application to get into the NATO military lines?
It's such a great question. This really goes back to the heart of this issue, and it puts that conversation right in the front sight post. When Ukraine dropped its nuclear weapons in 1994 and signed the Budapest Memorandum, they were given the impression that the United States, United Kingdom, and Russia were going to defend that territory or leave it sovereign. It's years later that we find out that is a dead letter memorandum when Russia annexed Crimea, and that basically gave the world notification that no one was coming to Ukraine's defense. And to defend Ukraine a little bit, the United States has sort of teased out and dangled a NATO application for a long time. And when you talk to Ukrainians on the ground, their heart was into this. They believed they were going to be part of the Western alliance. But in fairness, real politics suggests that when you're on the front doorstep of a guy like Vladimir Putin, he's not going to go quietly into the night and allow for an allegiance to fortify the Western defenses right on his front line. He said that all along. The United States does not have to listen to Vladimir Putin, but the way to put him on his back heels should have started 10 years ago and 15 years ago. We have consistently failed to do that. And so what you're seeing right now, Putin has exerted a lot of patience to get to where he is now. He's waited to attack. He's at a prime moment for himself. When the West really had an opportunity here, we missed it.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Jason Beardsley, for joining us and sharing with us all the insights on this conflict that is still presently evolving in Ukraine. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.